Hey all, this is Dr. Robinson. I'm going to post a short 15-minute video that goes over some pretty important points that I want to bring up in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, and then I'm going to post one for Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. I want to jump down to one of the slides that are a little bit further down in Chapter 1 and just reiterate that this course, as we discuss the concepts and the readings, and make sure that we're respecting each other, whether you're a majority group member or you're a minority group member, that we need to be respectful of each other as we discuss what we're going to discuss this semester. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 go into why this is so important and in the various ways that we can be offended, whether we're in the majority or the minority group, and whether we can offend others. And then if we jump down to, I think that's like the third slide, you can see some of the emotions that may surface as a result of this strong emotional reactivity to some of the content. And so we can experience anger at times, we can experience resentment, defensiveness, resistance, and rejection. And like we see or will see in our clients, there's a bigger meaning behind this expression of emotion. And so some of the bigger meaning can be guilt. I feel guilty for my place in society. Whether I even know that that's why I'm feeling this strong emotion, whether I know guilt is driving it or not, some of these emotional reactions can be as a result of this feeling of guilt. Some of these emotional reactions can be a result of feeling hopeless or helpless. I don't know what to do when it comes to being culturally competent or racial and ethnic diversity and the divide that exists there, so I'm not going to do anything. And feeling hopeless, there's really no hope. And so one can maybe be angered by that. One can create some resistance or some rejection as a result of some of these deeper feelings. But know that you will feel these feelings as we discuss the content, and that's okay. That's okay. The important part, again, is to be respectful and to discuss it. Your book goes on to say that it is imperative that we go through these feelings, that we process these feelings, and that we allow ourselves the opportunity to discuss these feelings, whether you're the majority group or you're the minority group. Now, in Chapter 1, going back to that first slide, in Chapter 1, the authors provide some examples of reactions from 4 students: a white female, a white male, a Latina student, and an African American male student. And they post these examples very early on to sort of set the stage for how some individuals may feel. Now, this is not static, and of course, not all white female or white male students are going to feel this way. Not all Latina students or African American male students are going to feel this way. But what we can pretty much say is that if you are in the majority group, so if you are essentially a white student from a Western, more Euro-American background, you will probably be rattled by some of the content that we discuss. And you are probably going to have some pretty strong reactions, some of those emotions that we discussed earlier. You may be really upset, as the white female and white male student expressed in your book, and you may have some really sort of harsh feelings for the authors of the book, me as your professor, and some of the other students in your class. And that's okay. You, however, have the ability and the professional responsibility to decide and to determine what you do with these feelings. So again, just kind of going on, and if we look at why these are important, why feeling these emotions, the anxieties, the fears, the guilt, the disappointment, the sadness, all of these emotional reactions that you may feel as we go through these chapters, why is it important? Well, that it's important because we can't see our clients for who they are and their experience that they want to come in and talk to us about without considering them through their worldview, not ours. And this can be an overt or a covert sort of neglect at viewing our client through their worldview. Again, going back to those white students that they discussed in the reactions from the white students listed in your textbook, we may be very well-meaning Caucasian, Euro-American individuals. We may try our hardest to not bring bias and prejudice and racial and ethnic division into our lives and into our interactions with others, but we do so anyway. And we do so without knowing, through microaggressions. Again, your book talks about microaggressions, so make sure you read up on that. There's a whole other section on microaggression that we'll discuss too. But this is not necessarily always intentional. But the big important part here is that we can't effectively and appropriately counsel and ethically counsel without exploring all these ideas about who we are and how we came to be and the different biases and divisions that we have that may affect the relationship we have with our clients, and then therefore the outcome for that individual. Students of color or students in minority groups may also have some pretty strong reactions related to this textbook and the content. You may feel heard, you may feel liberated, you may feel validated. You may also feel angry that we're discussing this, and we're discussing this in a way that may not honor how you actually feel. And what I suggest and what I hope is that you bring this up. We discussed on the very first day that, I asked the question, how does it feel being in a class taught by someone who is a seemingly white, privileged female? I brought that up as something for you to reflect upon, because maybe while the textbook is discussing one thing and in one way, it may not be expressed in our classroom discussion in a way that you want it to be, and I encourage you to bring that up. This class is going to be very discussion based, and it has to be, in order for us to discuss multicultural counseling and competencies in the most effective way. The most important part here is that if you are in a minority group, that you not use this course as a soapbox or a sort of vessel or forum for you to be resentful, or for you to get vindication, or for you to feel pleasure in the discomfort of the majority group members. And your book goes into talk about this as well. So it's really, really, really important that you recognize your role and your place being a student of color or being in a minority group in this class, where we are all going to sort of coexist together during times of discomfort and upset. And so this is going to be translated, hopefully, in your work with clients who may be of a different group than you. So if you're a student in a minority group, how is this going to play out when you have a client who is of the majority group, and vice versa? If you're a majority group member, how is this going to play out when you have a client who is of the minority group? So I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to jump into, make sure you check, I clicked on this, make sure you really, really look into cognitive resistance and how denial plays into that sort of way of thinking, emotional and behavioral resistance. Make sure you look into that. I'm going to jump into chapter 2 really quickly. So chapter 2 goes into more depth. Into the multicultural counseling competencies. And again, this can be really difficult. So chapter 2 goes into cultural universality. And actually, I think I'm going to stop here and post another video for chapter 2. I think that's just probably the best way to do this, if I can.